Here's a little tour of a bass dulcimer I'm about to deliver. It is the Acu-fretless model. You see, instead of frets, it has some depressions, grooves, troughs. It's like inlays without any inlay in them. Polyurethane bass strings, rubber strings. These are ping tuners. The strings themselves come from road-toed music. Paho bass strings, they're called, custom made for my basses. It's got some turquoise inlay, mahogany body. All the works live in a little compartment there with some magnets for the cover. And today I'm playing it through this little Roland battery-powered bass amplifier, which is very handy for playing, outside at festivals, around fires, and all that sort of thing. I'm going to try to give you a little bit of a tour of it here in a moment. First, a word about these grooved frets, which is not entirely evident to people at the first. You don't use them like you would normal frets. Your fingers don't play in between them to get the desired note. You play basically right on top of that space there. And let me show you a little sketch to make that clearer. Actually, that's some recording of the notes themselves. There we go. This is just a little sketch I did. You can see the fingers being simulated right there. That's what the groove looks like from the cutaway side. And the string is being depressed, this is exaggerated of course, into that groove, and you get a fret point right on the leading edge of that groove. Now, as you can see, the bridge is to the right and the nut is to the left, just the way you would play it. And that's what gives you the clean sound and the accurate sound. Unlike frets, however, when you move your finger off to the left, say in there, or off to the right, in that landing, the flat spot between the frets, you actually get other notes. So it makes it more expressive. It essentially makes it function like a fretless in that regard, so it is functionally chromatic. And I'll show you how it works. So this is a little bit of a crash course in bass dulcimer. It's newly strung up, so it's still stretching in a bit, but and oddly enough, as rubber strings get hot, they go sharp, and they get cold, they go flat. Nobody in physics or whatever has been able to explain that to me just yet, but that's what they do. Once they're stretched in, they're pretty darn stable. This lowest note is a note below a stand-up bass. This E would be the stand-up bass note, and that one is the lowest dulcimer note. I was just showing you a screenshot of how the Acu-fretless groove thing works, and in function, when you're playing it yourself, you land right on that little those grooves, and when you do, it has to be in tune. Now you can also create vibrato, and you can. The reason I developed them is because a fretted bass with rubber strings, I'll show you. See that note? Well, that's there. Now if I bend that the way you might to be expressive, see, it doesn't actually change the pitch? Well, that's a problem because rubber strings are so loose that stretching all the way across the fingerboard doesn't really affect the tone, the pitch at all. So in order to get expression, the equivalent of bending a note would be sliding on a fretless. Of course, the downside of now these are fretless, these inlays up there, and you get that slide whistle sort of effect when you do a gliss, and on a fretted instrument you would get all the notes really solidly. On here you hear the notes sort of coming through, but you also hear it's sort of landing on those diatonic notes. I don't know if you can hear it this way. Now those are, I was playing on the landing to show you the quality of the note is not really different from the quality of the note when you're playing on top of that groove. So, because this is tuned the way dulcimers are tuned, which is D-A-D, you've got a lot of relationships of 1-5 between those notes. And I'll show you how that is helpful in playing backup. Probably you're really familiar with this. You've heard a lot of that in country and folk and bluegrass and whatever. That's just the standard 1-5 backup. And then they often put little run notes to move to the next chord. There's a G chord. And an A chord. Back to D. Now, understandably, it's easiest to play in D, and a lot of dulcimer folks do. So if you're at a dulcimer jam, that may be the only key you play in. But they, we play in other keys as well, somewhat. But to give a sort of a crash course in a little tiny bit of music theory, and we'll go over how you find the chords you're going to be playing. Now, the truth is, if you're playing from written music, the chords just might be there, and you can just play whatever it says. You're going to have to learn what notes to play for what chords, but it's pretty darn simple. As we say, we've got D given to us. Of course, you can go bass, middle, or treble, middle, and you've still got that 1-5, at least, in relationship. Now, to find the chords most prevalent in a particular progression, the key numbers to remember are 1 and 4 and 5. And the way you use 1, 4, and 5 is you just take the tonic of the key you're in, which is the very first note of that key, in this case D, and you just count D, E, F, G. That's the 4 chord of that series, and then 5 would be A. So you've got D, G, and A, most common chords played in a cluster in the key of D. Now, of course, D is right here, and we can now apply what we know about where our different frets fit in the alphabet. We know that, after you play a D, you go to the first fret on a dulcimer and you get E, and the next fret technically is an F sharp because that's what it is in the key of D. Then you've got G and A and B and C and C sharp and D, like that, and on up. So if we know that D is our 1 chord and we want to play G as the 4 chord, then we're just going to fret right here at that 3rd fret. Notice I'm on it, not between them. D, G. Now the 5 chord would be 1 up. A, G. Now you'll notice I do a lot of this thing, which stand-up bass players do for effect. I do it more often perhaps than stand-up bass players because I'm dealing with an instrument that has greater sustain than a stand-up bass note would. See, it just goes on, and you don't always want it to do that. Sometimes you do. Now you can either mute it, as I was doing with my hand. You can mute it with the finger you're playing with. You can also use the flesh of your hand here down on the bridge like you do sometimes on regular steel-stringed instruments. Depending on how much or little you mute it, you can get it to sound pretty much like a stand-up. There. Now, if I were going to play that without getting fancy and doing the A down here, it's hard to tell, perhaps, at a glance why I'm playing the A down there instead of just coming up here. Either one will work. And it's pretty easy in D to do that because you've got the open chord, the 4 and the 5. Let's say, just for grins, that you're playing in an open jam and they're playing in E. Well, it's pretty easy to know that your tonic is going to be down here at the 1st fret. Now there's E. You count on your fingers, E, F, G, A. A is now going to be your 4 chord, and that's here, right? 1 chord, 5 chord, 4 chord, 1 chord. Now you understand you can, because of the bass string having the same relationship to the middle string, you could do that. Also, but now you notice once we do that, we're moving quite a bit. We got there and there and there and there, and we're kind of moving back and forth. It's not a long ways to move. It's not that big a deal, and you can do it that way. It keeps things very logical in your head about just using the alphabet and the fret numbers. But if you learn to map out your fingerboard and find out where the various notes are, you'll find out that these 2 notes can be found up here. Middle string, 4th fret, bass string, 5th fret. Now watch how convenient it is. Once you've gotten your tonic from the middle and the bass string, the 4th is right here. The 5th is here. 4th, tonic, number 1. Isn't that nice? It's all clustered. Now you could have done the same thing for the D. Instead of playing the D open here, you can play the D here. G, A, now you'll notice because you're now playing all of the notes fingered, and then none of them are open, you don't have to deal so much with the sustain because you can back off on the note, muting it after you play it. Like that. So now the other chord that only one other one that we'll deal with today that's really commonly played even in folk music in that progression of chords is the relative minor to the key you're in. And the way you find that is the number of it is 6 minor. So once again, in D, E, F, G is 4, A is 5, and B is 6. And most of us know the shape of a B minor is down here on a 3-string dulcimer, and that's because that B note is right there in the middle string, and then you're getting other notes around it. So if D is here, notice the B. And it's good to notice the relationship. My middle string finger, actually both of them, but I'll talk about the middle string finger. It's moving the big fret and a little fret to the left. That's the equivalent of 3 small steps to get that B minor chord. Now if you were playing in the E like we were before, now you notice you have to be a little more accurate with this note to get it to sound right. And that's a matter of ear and experimentation, but it's more or less in the middle there. And you see, but that minor chord ends up being the same relationship to this cluster as the B minor was to the other. Now the upside of all of these groove things is that in the middle of a song you can just nail those notes, even though you're sliding up pretty high. That may cover it. The instrument itself is fairly rugged. It makes no sound if your amp is not on, so you really has to either plug it in or plug it into something you'd listen to with headphones to practice. just so you know, sometimes people think this is just to make it louder. It's not. It's to actually give you the tone. So a lot of the sound of your instrument is going to be based on the quality of the amp you're putting it through, and also tweaking it. My recommendation, for the most part, since you're dealing with the low notes on this, is to, emphasize the bass, and often you de-emphasize, turn down the mids and the trebles. This being a piezo pickup, it's not these are rubber strings, so you can't have coils. You will pick up some just some string slap or snap, and you can use that intentionally if you want to. But dialing back the mids and the highs will give you a rounder, more stand-up bass like so. So I hope that. The only thing I didn't mention is that traditionally runs are put in between, as I was doing. There's no hard and fast rule about that. It's something you can be creative with, and you don't need them at all. And sometimes on slow pieces, you'll just be playing a tonic note per chord. So that's about it. I hope you enjoyed this little demo, and if you have one of these already, I hope you enjoy exploring it. Keep me posted on how you do, and if you're interested in one of these, check out my website. It's on the screen there, davidbeede.com.